Achrei Mot למחזיקים בה ותומכיה מאושר תרחיה דרכי נועם וכל נתיבותיה
Shalom. Our Torah portion this week is Parshat Achrei Mot, and it begins with chapter 16 of the book of Leviticus. Now I want to talk to you today about a certain passage beginning with chapter 18. Let's see what it says in the Hebrew. Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe lemor, daber el bnei Yisrael v'amarta alehem, ani Adonai Elohechem, k'maaseh eretz Mitzrayim asher yeshavtem ba, lo ta'asu, וכמעשה ארץ כנען אשר אני מביא אתכם שמה לא תעשו ובחוקותיהם לא תלכו. את משפטי תעשו ואת חוקותי תשמרו ללכת בהם אני אדוני אלוהיכם. ושמרתם את חוקותי ואת משפטי אשר יעשה אותם אדם וחי בהם אני Adonai. The Eternal One spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the Israelite people and say to them, I, the Eternal, am your God. You shall not copy the practices of the land of Egypt where you dwelt, or of the land of Canaan to which I am taking you, nor shall you follow their laws. My rules alone shall you observe and faithfully follow my laws. I, the Eternal, am your God. You shall keep my laws and my rules, by the pursuit of which human beings shall live. I am the Eternal. Notice what is written here. God is instructing our ancestors not to follow the laws of the Egyptians, whose land we dwelt for 400 years, not to follow their ways either, and not to follow the ways or the laws of the Canaanites. Now, the Canaanites were occupying at this time the land that God had promised us. Now, we can understand why God would say, do not follow the laws of the surrounding people. In those days, the law was not only a civil matter, it was also a religious matter. There were certainly many laws that would lead a person to worship false gods and many gods, and there were also practices, and this is the question that arises in my mind. Why does the Torah say, "Do not follow their practices"? And what does it mean by practices? We understand what laws mean, but what does it mean not to follow their practices? I believe what the Torah is saying here is to be cautious of culture, of lifestyle choices that we make. We make lifestyle choices all of the time, and we should be careful not to make a clear-cut division between religious ideas and values on one hand and culture and lifestyle choices on the other. Because culture, and by culture I mean everything from art and literature to cuisine to sports to fashion to even recreation, all of these things in one way or another transmit values. Now, Rashi makes an interesting comment on this passage. He tells us that in ancient Canaan, the people engaged in bullfighting. They loved bullfighting. Now, I'm not sure whether that's historically true or not. Certainly, people in the southern part of France and the northern part of Spain, that area where Rashi lived 900 years ago, engaged in bullfighting. Rashi tells us that bullfighting, and he's specific about it, is not something that Jews should engage in. Why? Even though it's not specifically forbidden in the Torah, he sees it as being excessively cruel and humiliating to an innocent animal, in this case the bull, something that Jews shouldn't do. It's following a cultural or recreational activity that is not with keeping or not in keeping with Jewish values. Now, in ancient Israel, there were gladiator fights. The Romans had constructed amphitheaters in various places in Israel, and in those amphitheaters, men often fought each other to the death. Generally, Jews did not participate in such a spectacle, and they were discouraged from doing so, especially Jews who were concerned with the preservation of Judaism and Jewish values. Now, there was an interesting exception. Reish Lakish, a very famous rabbi in that period, had been, believe it or not, a gladiator when he was a young man. And at some time along his life, he came to study Torah and became a sage, and a widely quoted sage at that. He continued to go to gladiator fights, and much to the dismay of some of his colleagues. And he explained to them, that in a gladiator fight, when one man stands over another man, the victor in the fight stands over the other man with his sword to the vanquished man's throat, to the defeated man's throat. He looks up to the crowd and asks them whether the man should live or die. If the crowd has more thumbs pointing up, the man lives. If the crowd predominantly gives the thumbs down sign, the man is killed. Reish Lakish said, I continue to go to the gladiator fights to raise my thumb in favor of life, that the vanquished man, shall live. And in a strange way, Reish Lakish was living out the Jewish value of human life in a very interesting manner. This Torah portion, I believe, challenges us that when we make our lifestyle choices, when we engage in cultural or sporting events, that we should think of our Jewish values and filter our choices through those Jewish values. One thing that is of concern to me in this day and age is something called maximum martial arts, where they put two men in a cage and they fight bare-fisted and they pound each other. To me, this is something that I'm not so sure that a Jew should participate in or even be a spectator of, or in any way support or any way derive benefit from, simply because it does not comport with Jewish values. So I hope you will read this week's Torah portion and you'll come to your own conclusion. And until then, Shabbat Shalom.